All right, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. My name's Sean. I'm the product manager here at Zyxel for our Nebula and our wireless products. As we go through today, feel free to send in questions. You do that using the question and answer interface. I can see those as we go through. If you send something via chat, I normally can't take a look at that until the end. So send them in with the question and answer interface in Zoom. And I'll do my best to answer them as we go through. So today we are talking about Nebula. Nebula is the first full stack cloud networking solution designed for SMB. So let's do a little bit of history here. Cloud networking really took off a while back, and one of the big pioneers in that was Meraki. Meraki was eventually purchased by Cisco and merged into the Cisco product lines. So they were sort of the pioneers in full stack cloud networking. And the problem we run into is they were really aimed at the enterprise space and had prices and terms that coincided with that. So we decided to create something similar to what Meraki offers, but aim it particularly at the smaller MSP space and the SMB business space. It's full stack, meaning it supports all of our key product lines, switches, security gateways, and wireless. So we launched all the way back in 2016, and we've constantly been working to expand the number of products you can manage with Nebula, as well as continually improve the features and usability of Nebula. This year, most of our updates are really focused on going to be improving the GUI and making things even simpler and easier to do in the cloud. So Nebula is made up of a couple different components here. We've got our security gateways and UTM firewalls, our access points, our switches. The main component of Nebula is what we call the Nebula Control Center. You'll see it often abbreviated as NCC, and that's the web interface you use to manage all your products. It is hosted in the cloud. You simply go to nebula.zyxel.com and all of your customers and all of their devices can be found there. And then we also have a mobile app specifically designed for iOS and Android smartphones. If you are using a tablet, the app doesn't really work too well for that. We suggest for tablet users to use the web interface rather than the app. So the idea behind Nebula is to make things easier for you. So things will be simpler for you to set up and do, and so it takes less time to do them. So this here, what we see on the screen is, kind of a list of all the things you have to do when setting up a new customer's network. With Nebula, all these squares that have been changed to gray are areas where it's either quicker to do or requires less equipment to do or less things to be purchased when you're using Nebula Cloud versus trying to do things in the traditional network deployment way. So one of the key things with Nebula here is being able to get things up and running in just a few minutes. All you need is a Nebula account. And you can start instantly creating your customers and setting up their configurations. Once you start getting into Nebula and adding product, we've got a number of wizards and tools to help simplify things and get things going quickly. So with Nebula, you don't have to actually interface with the hardware to configure and set it up. In fact, you don't even need to take it out of the box. So as I was just mentioning, you can log in and start creating your customers' accounts in their sites at any point, even before you finalized your purchase for the hardware. A significant amount of the features and settings can be set up in advance. And then once you do get the hardware shipped to you, you simply need to assign the hardware to the customer site. And you do that by scanning a QR code with the mobile app or manually typing in the serial number and MAC address to the web interface. That QR code can be found on the bottom of most Nebula products. It can also be found on the outside of the box. So you don't even have to take it out of the box. You can simply scan it and assign it to your customer and then ship it out to where it's going to be installed. So to use Nebula, there's nothing extra you need to purchase. There's no extra hardware like a cloud key or a CNA device. There's no software that needs to be installed on a computer, on a workstation, on a server somewhere. The entire Nebula product line has the Nebula capabilities built into the hardware itself. It doesn't need any sort of intermediary step. It will simply reach out to the cloud, see if it's been assigned to a customer, and if so, we'll convert to Nebula mode and we'll download its configuration and update its firmware. Joe had a question here asking if the USG Flex UTM line is ready for quick setup. So that is the one exception when it comes to the USG Flex and the ATP products. There's a few extra steps you have to go through to get them into the Nebula cloud. And we are working going forward here to making it easier to do. We've already made some steps that make it easier than it was last year. And I believe there are some plans to make it even easier to get those security devices into the cloud. So one of the questions we get is, well, why is it harder to set these up in the cloud than switches and access points? And it's just because that security gateway, is the gatekeeper for your entire network. So we want to be sure that if you are setting up the gateway into Nebula, that you indeed do have access to the hardware and in possession of it for that initial setup, to make sure somebody isn't getting in there and taking over somebody's gateway by setting it up into their own cloud. So there's some extra security steps we go through, but again, we're looking at how to simplify it and make it go smoother while also maintaining that level of security. So I hope that helps. So we've got a question here from Richard. Richard is asking, when connecting a Zyxel switch for the first time, I had to connect to the switch and change the default setting to allow for Nebula Cloud Control. Is there an option to purchase a switch for the default setting for Nebula as on? Richard, maybe send to me, we can discuss it later, but send to me via chat maybe what model it is, because all of our switches, as far as I'm aware, you just need to scan the QR code and get them going into the cloud. Was it a 1350 series? I believe those may have an additional step on the 1350, but all the rest should be able to automatically switch into Nebula if they've been assigned to a Nebula customer. Going on here. So when accessing your stuff, all you need is an internet connection and a web browser. And you have access to all of your customers and all of their networks. There's no need to set up VPNs to get access to your customer's network to configure things, setting up port forwards, things like that. So Nebula has made it easy to provide guest access, whether we are talking about guest access for visitors to a corporate network, vendors coming by or customers coming by, or whether you're looking to provide a more what's the term I'm looking for here? A more comprehensive hotspot type solution for public access, like at a cafe or a hotel. Captive Portal is built in on our access points. So even if you aren't using one of our gateways, you can still use Captive Portal with our access points. And then of course, we also offer Captive Portal through the gateway itself. And we give you a lot of flexibility on how that page looks. By default, we give you a sort of a what you get type editor in the Nebula interface to change the colors and add a logo. But if you need more customization of that captive portal, we allow you to download the HTML and CSS files, modify them, and then re-upload them to the cloud. And of course, if you need even more functionality, we can always have the captive portal pointed to a web page that you host yourself somewhere. And then when it comes to guests being able to get onto that network, we've got a lot of options there. We've got your terms of service page, where they have to agree to a terms of service to get on. We have the ability to give them usernames and passwords before they can log in, the ability for people to register their own email address before they can get on, the ability to have people log in using their Facebook credentials. So a lot of flexibility when it comes to deploying Nebula. David Stone, I will go through those later on in today's presentation. I will go through all the switches that work with Nebula. So on the wireless side of things, we have our smart mesh functionality. So it can work two different ways. You can have it set up to just as general, you've got some APs, you want to improve coverage, but you don't have Ethernet backhaul to that location. We can use mesh for that. We can also have it set up so devices automatically convert to mesh should something happen to their physical wired connection. We offer all the latest in security, including WPA3 Enterprise, and we support all the normal, fast roaming standards, 11R, 11K, 11V. On the switch side of things, we offer our intelligent PoE on most models. So that lets us monitor the actual PoE utilization from connected devices and free up your PoE budget so you can have more devices in the same PoE budget space on your switch. We offer friendly ACL rules, VLAN configuration, loop guards, DHCP server guard, etc., and the ability to basically virtually stack our switches so you can make configuration changes on ports on different switches simultaneously. And again, all updates are done over the air. That's both configuration changes and firmware updates are all done through the cloud and then pushed out to the customer site. So again, there's no need to go on site. There's no need to VPN in, things like that. And you do get the ability to schedule those firmware updates when they happen. On the security side of things, we make VPN easy, particularly site-to-site VPN. Simply choose the sites you want to VPN together, choose the topology, and we handle everything else on the VPN configuration. When it comes to remote users, if you're using L2TP over IPsec, we have the ability to send out configuration scripts that will configure iOS, Macintosh, and Windows devices to automatically connect using the built-in VPN clients on those devices. Doesn't work on Android because there's just too much variability there. And again, Nebula is designed to give you one place to manage all of your customers. When we designed Nebula, we specifically made it with the idea that you would have a bunch of different customers, a lot of different sites, and to try to make it as easy as possible to get to the customer you want to look at. So this will take a look here. This is showing you the organization view. So in Nebula, we're calling your customers essentially organizations. So you have different organizations or different customers, and then you have sites under those customers. So when you choose one of your customers, you'll be presented with this view here. As you can see, we have Google Maps integration, so you can drag and drop your customer sites into different physical locations on the map just for better visual representation. And you can see you'll get a list of all of their sites. What the health of those sites are they having issues with connectivity, et cetera, how many devices they have, and some other basic specs there for you. You then go and choose the site you want to manage, and it takes you to our dashboard here. So the first thing you will notice is there are, well, maybe, I know it's small for probably some of you, there are pull down menus at the top. One is a list of your customers, and then the other is a list of the sites for that customer that's currently selected. So it makes it really easy to jump between customers or jump between sites. And then here in the middle, you have your widgets. So these are customizable, which widgets are there, but they can show you things like how many users are on the wireless network, your PoE utilization versus your budget. And then down here, if you're using our gateways and our UTM services, we've got reports which can show you which users are using your bandwidth, which applications are using up your bandwidth on the network, things like that. So it gives you a quick snapshot of what's going on. And then on the left-hand side here are where you get to all of your configuration and monitoring tools. And we've got them grouped by the customer, by the site, and then the individual type of product. So access points, switches, and gateways. So here's a view once you click into your access points. David Stone had a quick question, so let's take that real quick. Can the widgets be customized for all clients at once, or do they need to be individually customized? It is done on a per site basis, I believe. I don't think it's org, I think it's a site basis. So you can have different settings for different customers. There is no way to change those widgets, I think, globally. So this is showing you here our wireless view. So this is a monitoring view. You can see here over the top, we've got the ability to do to see utilization of your network and bandwidth utilization over time. And you can see there are drop downs here, so you can filter that down to individual clients or devices and the time scale. And then we've got a list of different status of what's been going on. And again, these are all customizable, so you can choose what you are seeing here. But you can see, whether the user is currently online or offline, a description of the user, which AP and which SSID they are connected to, MAC address, IP address, channel used, band utilization, what their signal strength was if they are currently connected, and a bunch of other things there. So it gives you a lot of tools to see what's going on into the network and what may be going wrong. Switch side of thing is very similar. Again, we've got the ability here to show a chart of bandwidth utilization over time. And then up here, all of your switches will be listed with their ports. So the ports are highlighted to make it easy to tell whether that port is currently plugged into something or not. If it is currently connected at gigabit speeds or 10/100 speeds, if it is currently providing PoE power. And then when it comes to configuring things, you just go in, choose the ports you want to configure, and then it brings up a configuration page. So you can quickly change a lot of different settings across different ports simultaneously. So everything I've been talking to up to this point is free. So Nebula is, I believe these days, the only cloud managed solution that's still free that doesn't implement some really draconian limitations. So with our free version of Nebula, there is no limit to the number of customers you can manage, and there is no limit to the number of devices you can manage. Joseph had a question here. Can we let the hotel manager into Nebula with limited access? Yes. With Nebula, you've got really granular control over what different users have access to. So yes, you could create a read-only account for a hotel manager, for instance, so they can log in and see things, but not allow them to change things. We have an installer view, which allows people to add devices to a customer's network, but doesn't allow them to configure those devices. We have a tool, if you're doing hotspot type access, we have a user type that allows them to go in and create new accounts, usernames and passwords to use for those users logging in, but doesn't give them access to anything else. And this is all done on the per site basis. So, you know, a hotel manager at one location can have access just to his hotel, whereas maybe a regional manager or somebody who's managing multiple hotels, you could give them access to those hotels that they have access to. So a lot of flexibility there for you as far as how the users go and how things are set up. So when it comes to Nebula, we've moved to something that we call Nebula Flex. So originally when we launched Nebula, it was kind of like Cisco with Meraki, right? If you want to manage stuff in the Meraki cloud, you have to buy the Meraki hardware. And if you don't want to use the cloud, then you buy Cisco hardware. And originally when we launched Nebula, that is how we did it. But we realized that that wasn't very friendly, especially in the SMB space, where a lot of you guys out there have some customers that are hesitant to use the cloud, some that are fine with the cloud. So you may be managing both types of customers. And we realized it would be a lot simpler if we simply built Nebula into everything essentially and allowed you to decide for that individual customer what you're using, cloud or standalone. So products that are labeled as Nebula Flex, those are products that can be used the traditional standalone way, managing them through a web GUI or a CLI or SNMP, or you can use those in the cloud. So you can standardize on one line of products, regardless of how you are managing those products. And then we have products that are labeled Nebula Flex Pro. So the main difference between Nebula Flex and Nebula Flex Pro is Nebula Flex Pro products come bundled with 1 year of our Nebula Pro licensing. So we'll get to that here in a few slides, but we do offer optional licenses which unlock additional features in the cloud. So we'll go through those and explain those to you. The one difference here is when it comes to our wireless access points. So, you know, traditionally wireless access points, you manage them with a local controller. So products that are labeled Nebula Flex Pro can be managed directly in standalone. They can be managed through the cloud, or they can be managed with a wireless LAN controller. So 3 modes for those on access points. Now, one thing I do want to highlight here and bring up is that there tend to be some feature differences between standalone and Nebula Cloud. And because of that, and some other little things there, when you switch between the traditional standalone mode or cloud managed mode, the configuration is reset. It doesn't port the configuration from one to the other. So something to keep in mind when deciding what you want to do. So if you decide to move from one to the other, you are going to have to reconfigure everything. So here is our list of our products that support Nebula. So on the Nebula Flex side of things, we have our access points. It gets a little bit weird because we've just recently launched some new access points that don't follow the traditional naming conventions. So our professional class access points will be access points that have 3 or 4 numerals in the model name. So Nebula Flex products are those products that start with the number 1 or the number 2, such as the NWA 210AX. And then our sort of prosumer APs, the NWA 50, 55, and 90, those also support Nebula Flex. On switches, our GS1920 V2 series supports Nebula. The older V1s do not. We specifically had to make some changes to our switches to get them to work with Nebula. They needed some extra memory, and we also wanted to change the LEDs to indicate cloud connection. So V1s will work or will not work. V2s will work in the Nebula Cloud. And then the 1930 series switches are also Nebula Flex. And then when it comes to our security gateways, if you buy a USG Flex standalone device, those also support Nebula management. Then when we jump to Nebula Flex Pros, those will be our business APs that start with 5 or 6 and have at least 3 digits in the number. So 510D, 650S, 630S, WAC 6502D-S. These are all manageable in the cloud, and they come bundled with 1 year of the Nebula Pro licensing, as well as the ability to work with a local controller. Then on our switches, the GS1350 series, the GS2220 series, and the XS3800 series, these are Nebula Flex Pro switches, so they will come bundled with 1 year of licensing. I know, Richard, you were saying that there's a switch in the GS1350-6HP that you had to change. I believe that's correct. That is the one exception here. The 1350s need a little bit more than just going into the QR code. And I'm not sure what the reason is behind that. I would need to check with Fry. So if that's an important question to get an answer to, send me an email after the presentation or reach out to your salesperson and have them forward it, and I'll get that answer. Like I said, I'm not sure why we did it that way on the 1350s. And then when it comes to the USG Flex, if you buy a version which comes bundled with a UTM license, it also will include 1 year of Nebula Pro Packs. And then the ATP series gateways, those all come with the Pro Pack license bundled with them. And then if you any point you renew the gold license also includes that Nebula Pro Pack features. Joseph is asking a question here. What features are currently missing in the cloud in regards to managing wireless? The main one that I can think of is Nebula Cloud does not support rogue AP detection and containment, although using rogue AP containment in the US is a potential legal issue. But at the moment, the cloud doesn't support that. Everything else is roughly the same, although there may be some differences in implementation. For instance, the Nebula mesh is different than the smart mesh functionality. But the implementation is different. The general features are basically the same between them. So we'll go on here. So we'll talk a little bit about Nebula licensing now. It can get confusing. There's a lot of different options, which is something I don't like to keep adding new licenses here. So let's talk about it a little bit. So the base version of Nebula is free. Like I said, there's no limitations to the number of customers you can manage or the number of devices. And most of the core functionality of all the products is there in that free version with a few exceptions. Then we have a Plus Pack and a Pro Pack. So initially Nebula was just available with the free version or the Pro Pack. And then last year, almost exactly a year ago, we added Plus Pack as an option. So Pro Pack is really aimed at MSPs and unlocks a number of additional features. And we'll go through these features here in just a second. Plus Pack was for those that were looking at stuff like Netgear's cloud solution. So it unlocks some features for a little extra features there. for those that need a little bit more than what's in the free version, but didn't need the full Pro Pack. And again, I think our primary competitor there is the Netgear Cloud. So when we're talking about these licenses, the Plus and the Pro Pack license, you need to have a license for each device in the organization. So, if you have 10 devices in the organization, you need 10 licenses, and they need to be applied to each device. Only once all the devices have a license applied to them can you convert the site into a Plus or Pro organization. And in the case where a license on, you add devices today, and then maybe 6 months from now, you add a couple more devices to the customer site. So you've got different expiration dates. So if a device expires and loses its license, you will be notified about this. You'll be getting a bunch of different warnings that it's coming up. And then when it happens, you will get a 15-day grace period. So it won't disable those Plus or Pro Pack features for 15 days after the expiration to give you time to add the license back in. But if you don't, the device will fall back to the free version of Nebula until all of the devices do have a license. Licenses that you purchase, not those that are bundled, but those that you purchase, can be removed from one device and moved to a different device. And of course, devices can be moved from one customer to another if you need to for whatever reason. So let's go through the differences between the different versions of Nebula here, the free version, the Plus, and the Pro. So all of them give you access to that Nebula Cloud Management and give you access to the core features of those devices. All of them have our zero-touch auto deployment, where you simply plug in the device. And as soon as you've added it to a customer of yours in their site, the device will know that and switch itself over into cloud mode, with the exception of gateways and the 1350 series switches. But otherwise, they all have that. Over-the-air firmware management is there. Scheduling is there. The ability to use our iOS and Android apps are there. So one of the first areas where we run into some difference comes into the logs. So logs are stored in the cloud for you automatically. We do offer syslogs, so if you prefer to export those and not store them in the cloud, you can. But if you are storing them in the cloud, the free version of Nebula only keeps 24 hours of log information in the cloud. If you update to the Plus Pack, you get a week's worth of information stored in the cloud. And then if you jump up to Pro Pack, you get a year's worth of logs that are stored in the cloud for you. Another difference here is the number of admin accounts, and we do highly suggest that you don't share admin accounts. Give each one of your guys who's going to be managing this customer their own admin account. So with the free version of Nebula, each organization can have up to 5 different admins. With a Plus Pack, you get up to 8, and with Pro Pack, there is no limit to the number of admins that you can have per organization. We have a cloud database that you can use for authentication purposes. So you can use it for MAC filtering, or you can use it for 802.1x authentication. So if you are using that, the free version of Nebula limits that to 50 entries into that database. Plus Pack increases that to 100 entries in the database, and Pro Pack is essentially an unlimited number of entries into that database. Of course, for user authentication, you can always use your own 802.1x server. This is just for those of you that are using our cloud-hosted database for that functionality. Let's keep going through here. All your basic, wireless settings are there. Your firewall rules are there. 802.1x authentication, MAC filtering is there in all versions. Captive portal is there in all versions. So one of the areas where we start to see some differences here is going to be advanced firmware scheduling. So the free version does let you schedule firmware updates. With the Plus and Pro Pack, you get a lot more flexibility when it comes to those schedules. So you can set different schedules for different types of devices. You can set different schedules for individual devices using the Plus and Pro Pack. Plus and Pro Pack also unlock a lot of reporting functionality. So you can have Nebula automatically email you or your customers reports on whatever schedule you want. So that can be things like, content filtering reports, so you can show the customer, what sites their employees have been trying to go to that were blocked and why they were blocked, antivirus reports, things like that. And it allows you to add your logo to those. So when you can set them up to send to your customer, it'll look like it's coming from you. It's a really nice tool if you're using UTM features, and it helps, resell those licenses when they come up, so you can show them, here's what's been going on. We offer an automatic network topology view where we'll go through and we will automatically generate a chart showing you which devices are plugged into which other devices. And I have a slide coming up which shows you what that looks like. If you want to get email alerts when devices go offline, you need the Plus or the Pro Pack. And then we have what are called Wi-Fi vouchers. So this is sort of like if you're doing paid hotspot access, you can use vouchers. So you need the Plus or Pro Pack to use those Wi-Fi vouchers. It also unlocks Facebook Wi-Fi, which is different than Facebook login, I believe, or maybe that's part of just Pro. Let's see. So the Pro Pack now is going to give us some additional features above and beyond the Plus Pack. So it gives us user audit / change logs. So you can see who made configuration changes and when. So if you're trying to, troubleshoot something, you're wondering, well, why is this configured this way? You can go into the logs and see who set it up that way. So you can go and talk to them. It gives you the ability to do customer-wide configuration syncs across different sites, the ability to clone existing customers, and the ability to set up templates so you can, change things, multiple settings across multiple sites at the same time. The ability to back up and restore your switch configurations. The ability to open a ticket directly in the Nebula interface that goes directly to our headquarters for help troubleshooting things. So even if you're going to work with our local support, it's really nice to be able to go in there, open the ticket, then call into support and say, hey, I opened the ticket, here's the ticket number, so they can get easy access and see what's going on. It unlocks advanced AAA features using Radius servers. So those are things like dynamic pre-shared keys, Facebook Wi-Fi, dynamic VLAN assignments based on Radius authentication, etc. David, I will get to that a little bit later on. I'm not going to take that right now. So some other features here, we give you some more access to advanced Wi-Fi features, the ability to set up different thresholds for signal strength per AP basis. So you can have different APs with different settings. The programmable SSIDs. So let's say you're doing a hotel and each room is getting, or a condo, and each one is getting its own SSID. You can set that up programmatically so it can automatically generate a unique SSID for each physical access point. It gives you our access to our smart AI-based Wi-Fi monitoring, where we monitor the signal quality and can make configuration changes based on what we are seeing from the individual users, as well as giving you some reports to let you know, which users are having issues, which APs they're connected to, et cetera. Advanced IPTV features such as advanced IGMP settings, an IPTV report, again, using artificial intelligence to give you suggestions as to settings you should change to improve the customer experience of those IPTVs. It gives you access on the 1350 series of our switches to some additional features that aren't normally in the Nebula interface, things like our extended range, the ability to automatically reboot connected PoE devices should they stop responding, et cetera. The ability to do cloud-based packet captures on the security gateways, and our reasonably new collaborative detection and response feature that's part of the USG series. Okay, so Lacey has a question. I'm really confused about Nebula Flex and Nebula Flex Pro, and then the base pack, Plus, and Pro. Are there 3 packs just for Nebula Flex Pro or the other? So with Nebula, you've essentially got 3 options here when managing your Nebula site. You have access to the free version of Nebula, the Plus pack, or the Pro pack. So those are the 3 different basically levels of features that you can have in the Nebula cloud. Base pack is free. Plus and Pro Pack are subscription based. And so you need to buy a license for each device. And that's done on a customer basis or an organization basis. So you can have some customers using the free version, some customers using the Pro version, some customers using the Plus based on their individual needs. If you have a customer with a lot of different sites and only some sites need a type of licensing, you would split that into 2 different organizations for easier management. And then those Nebula Flex Plus products, Nebula Flex Pro products, those products include a bundled license for 1 year of Pro Pack. So you don't have to use it if you don't want to use it, but it comes bundled with the device when you buy it. I hope that answers those questions. If not, send in some follow-ups and we'll deal with them. So here's an example here of what the wireless artificial intelligence looks like. So you can see here we have plotted out users that are having issues. So 3 different levels here. Green is good, orange is marginal, and then red is having some serious issues. And we plot that over time. And again, if you enable it, we have the ability to change certain settings to help try to improve the customer experience for those users that are in the sort of red space there. When it comes to IPTV, we've got that reporting functionality. I know most IPTV platforms have their own reporting, but we give you our own analysis of what's going on the switch, and we can detect things like stutters and things like that, and give you suggestions of what you should change to solve that. And here's what that automatic topology view looks like. So you can see, it basically detects all the devices on the network and then draws which ones are connected to what. So, if you've got a certain device that's having issues, you can quickly check back to see which other switches down the line it has been connected to get to it, and where those problems might be. So that is it for the Nebula Plus and Pro licensing, or as we might call it, per device licensing. We do have some additional licenses, so we'll start going through some of those. One of them is called the MSP pack. So this is a separate license. So while the Plus and Pro licenses are linked to devices, the MSP license is linked to admin accounts. So you buy the license and you assign it to an admin user, and that admin user now gets access to some additional features that aren't normally part of Nebula. So one of those is this view that you get here. So this is very similar to that view I showed you. When you choose your customer, you've got a breakdown of their sites. Well, with this view, this is a list of all of your customers and a snapshot view of what's going on their network. Are they using the Plus pack? Are they using the free version? If they're paying for it, are there any devices that have recently expired? How many devices are assigned to those customers? How many of those devices are currently online versus offline, et cetera? So it just gives you a snapshot view of what's going on your different customer networks. So this is something that some of you that are larger MSPs may want to use just to make it easier for you to keep an eye on what's going on. Some of the additional features that it offers here for you is it allows you to rebrand the Nebula interface with your company's branding. So it adds your logo to the Nebula interface, and it removes the ability, if it's a ProPack org, for them to contact us. So it puts your information in for the support information. It allows you to create teams of admins. So instead of having to go through anytime, you add a new employee or lose an employee and having to go through to each of your sites that they're managing and add or remove them, you can simply create teams and then simply add or remove from the team. So you would assign a team to different sites, and then you would remove or add users to that team to make it a lot simpler and quicker to manage your admin users. We give you the ability to do synchronize certain settings between customers. So you can do all of that. It also unlocks a feature that overlaps with the Plus and Pro pack. It unlocks the ability for you to do email alerts. So if you buy the MSP license, assign it to an admin, every customer that admin has access to, you can now set up email alerts through. So if you you're using the free version of Nebula, and the only thing you're really missing is those email alerts. You can buy an MSP license, assign it to one of your admins, and then enable email alerts that way. So it may be a quicker or a cheaper way to do it if you've got a lot of free sites that you're managing. So again, this license is per admin. So only the admin account with the license gets access to these extra features. So if you want multiple users to have access to these extra features, you would need to buy multiple versions of the MSP license. Wayne is asking, is the MSP license version billed through distribution like Sophos? Good question. So let's talk about how do you buy licenses. So there's a couple ways. Licenses can be purchased through distribution. You contact whoever your distributor of choice is, order the licenses, and they will then place the order with us, and we will then email you the licenses as an attachment. If you're buying a lot of licenses, we can put it into an Excel sheet, which can be imported directly into Nebula. So that's option number one. Option number two is what's called Marketplace. And Marketplace, if you're one of our resellers, you shouldn't be using Marketplace, but Marketplace is an online store where you can buy the licenses, and that is linked through Nebula. So you can go into Nebula through one of your sites that needs some licenses, and then you can go in and have it take you directly over into Marketplace to buy the licenses that you need. If you are one of our resellers, you want to be part of Circle. So Circle is our online marketplace that's specifically designed for our resellers. So if you're a gold or silver partner, you can get your discounts through this online store. So you can buy them that way. And when you're buying them online, you have the option to buy the licenses and have them emailed to you, or you have the option to simply go in and buy the licenses and have them automatically applied to that customer. So if you're using Circle, you can go in. There's a license calculator where you simply go in and say, for this customer, I want everything to expire in this month. And it will tell you basically what licenses you need. You can then click over to Circle and you can purchase those licenses and have them automatically applied. In general, pricing is best buying through distribution, with Circle following that, and then Marketplace being, basically full MSRP. So easiest way to buy licenses is probably through Circle, but buying through distribution would be usually a little bit cheaper. Now, for those of you that are quite large, and we mean you're managing thousands of devices, we have some other postpaid options where we can simply bill you based on utilization every month. Or we also have the ability to do a sort of like a site license, which are incremented in units of 1,000. So you would agree to assign to a 1-year contract based on how many devices you currently have, rounded up to the nearest 1,000. And then regardless of how many devices you purchase and add to Nebula through the year, you get charged that flat rate on a quarterly basis. And then the next year, you would automatically be rebilled again based on how many devices you're currently managed, rounding up to the nearest 1,000. So there's a lot of flexibility there, whether you're an end user, a smaller MSP, or a larger MSP. We've got options there for you. Let's see, Joseph has a question here. Does infinite captive network software work in MSP? So I believe you're talking about Infinite Wi-Fi. So Infinite Wi-Fi is a third party we work with who offers the ability to monetize captive portals for like public networks. Infinite Wi-Fi, to use their services in full, requires a pro license. MSP license doesn't have anything to do with that. David Stone has a question here. Does the MSP licenses allow us to sync firewall settings across different organizations? No, MSP license has nothing to do with features of any of the devices. There is some cross-org synchronization, but I believe those are largely settings for ownership, time zone, things like that, things that have to do with your company. I believe so. I don't believe there's anything in there for firewalls. David was asking, should we buy licenses through distribution or Circle? I think I've already answered that earlier. Is Circle better if we want to align licenses? It certainly makes it easier, but you can still use it. We've still got that tool that you can go in if you want to buy through distribution. You can say, this is the customer, this is the date I want everything to expire, and it'll calculate it and tell you what number of each type of license you need to buy. Again, when you're buying a lot of licenses, we can send those to you in an Excel sheet, which you just import into Nebula. So you don't have to manually load them all in. You just upload the file, it finds them, and then Nebula has the ability, you can simply go in there and say, assign all of the licenses that I have, and it gives you a number of different options of how you want to do it, and it'll automatically then go ahead and assign them for you to each device. So Circle makes it a little bit easier, but I don't think buying through distribution is necessarily that much harder in general. And then David here is also asking, we are an MSP and we want to move all of our clients to ProPack. Can someone help me determine what we need to purchase and if we could purchase an MSP license? So probably the best person to work with is your salesperson, Jacob, David, or Andy, depending on where your company is located. And then they can loop in Marcus, who's our sales engineer, and they can get you guys all on the phone together and we can go through it. Again, it's going to be pretty easy to do. You go into organization, you go into license management, and it'll show you all the devices. It'll show you all your licenses that you own. It'll show you which devices have licenses added to them, which devices don't. And like I said, we've got the ability to go in there and basically you can say, hey, I want to upgrade everything to Pro and I want it to expire at this point, and it'll calculate that for you. And it'll take into account any licenses you currently own, any bundled licenses, things like that. So you're not doubling up on stuff. So you can do it yourself just by going into organization and then license management, license and device management, or you can talk to your salesperson, and if needed, we can get Marcus on the phone. We can walk you through it the first time or two so you can figure out how it works. Absolutely. All right, that's it for questions right now. Let me continue on with some slides. More licenses, yes. So we sell security licenses. So this has nothing to do with Nebula, really. It's your traditional security gateway. The security gateways offer the ability of providing UTM services. So if you've been selling firewalls before, you're probably already familiar with this. So that's the ability to enable additional security features at the gateway, things like antivirus, anti-spam, content filtering, intrusion detection, etc. So if you are using one of our older NSG gateways, we have an NSS security pack for those which unlock the UTM features they support. If you are using a UTM device, you simply buy so this would be like our USG Flex series. You can buy the UTM license to unlock those UTM features. And I believe it's the same license whether you're using the cloud or not. The ATP series of products, the Nebula Cloud is part of the gold package. So if you buy gold, you get the security UTM features as well as ProPack. So those are separate licenses just for those security features on the gateways. And then we do have something here called secure Wi-Fi. It's not a Nebula only thing. We have this also available if you're not using Nebula, but this is an additional license, which is, sort of related to Nebula. And basically it allows you to turn an access point into a centrally managed VPN appliance. So it's an easy way of being able to provide VPN access for people that are doing hybrid work or work from home, access to the corporate network without having to, configure software on their computers, without having to worry about maybe double natting them. If you give them a traditional, security VPN appliance, they've got a gateway that came from their cable company or their DSL provider, and they don't want to replace it, or maybe they can't replace it and they don't know how to do, configure it for non-natting. So it's an easy way to just basically say, here's an access point, plug it into your existing gateway at home. Now you've got access to your corporate network. And then it's done using, oops, we got a slide on it. It's done by you assign a certain SSID in the cloud, and any device that connects to that SSID essentially has a VPN connection back to the office. Now, to make sure that that SSID is secure, it does require that you use 802.1x authentication. So you can't just put a pre-shared key onto this SSID. In order to use this feature, you enable 802.1x, where you've got a username and password that are authenticated back to a database, either in the cloud or using 802.1x or Radius. And you also have to use two-factor authentication. So both of those must be met in order to get onto the wireless network and get onto that VPN connection. So you don't have to worry about the kids getting onto it when they shouldn't, things like that. So that is a license you can purchase, which unlocks this work from home functionality. And we also just earlier this year rolled out something new called Connect and Protect. So again, Nebula is used to manage our devices, and not everything on the network needs to be Nebula. Right. So if you've got, a gateway that came from the ISP, you can continue to use that. You just can't manage it in the cloud. Right. Nebula manages Nebula devices, but it works just fine with anything else that might be plugged in on the network or part of the network. So what we've got is we've got a lot of users out there that only use Nebula for the wireless. And some of them may want some, UTM type features. But again, maybe you're stuck with a gateway that doesn't support that, and you don't want to replace that gateway or can't because it was provided by your ISP. So we've created this Connect and Protect license that is just for access points. And it's designed to provide UTM-like services to access point users. So you can see here, it's doing it through an IP reputation filter. So it's not doing deep packet inspection or SSL inspection like our UTM devices do, but it does provide, using this IP reputation to filter, a pretty good security against different types of things here, right? It can block spam sources, it can block known scanners, it can block botnets, it can block websites that are known for phishing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a license you can buy. Now, this again is completely independent of the Nebula licenses. Nothing to do with whether you're using the free, plus, or pro. This is its own unique license just for enabling these services. And we've got two versions of the license. We have the CNP license, which works on the 1123 ACV3, the WAC 500, and the WAC 500H. So that is our IP reputation-based security filter. And then we also offer CNP Plus, which is available on basically our Wi-Fi 6 access points, starting with the 110 and up. And this one gives you that IP reputation filter, but it also gives you the ability to do bandwidth throttling on an application basis, right? So we know what servers and applications are connecting to, so we can recognize those applications and create bandwidth rules just for specific applications. For instance, saying, hey, I want to block or I want to bandwidth limit, Netflix, so I don't have a bunch of users eating up all my bandwidth streaming videos, or YouTube or something like that. Now, these licenses is done on a per AP basis. So you would buy the license and assign it to just those APs that you want to have this feature. So this would be, a common scenario in this would be, you're in a cafe or you're in an office where you've got a warehouse and you've got guest areas. So you want to provide the security in those guest areas, but not in the main employee areas. So you can just buy the licenses just for those AP that cover those public areas. And that, guys, is it for licenses. And I know it's a lot and can be kind of confusing. But hopefully I've made that as clear as possible. If not, send in some questions using that question and answer interface. We do have a free demo. So if you've never played with Nebula, you can go at any point to nebula.zyxel.com, choose Nebula Control Center, and then there should be a button at the bottom of the page which says like live demo or something like that. And it'll take you to a couple different hotels that we have using some basic Nebula stuff that we've got. So you can log into the Nebula interface and play around with things. You cannot change configurations, but it'll give you a good idea of how Nebula works, how it looks like, and let you play around with it. If you are a member of our partner program, we do have the ability to hook you up with a 60-day trial of some of our hardware. So you would reach out to your salesperson here at Zyxel, again, Andy, Jacob, David, or Tri, and if you qualify, they can hook you up with some 60-day demo equipment for your lab. And then lastly, I've been asked to point these out to you guys. There are a lot of different Zyxel channels on YouTube just because of the global nature of the company. So for the US, we are a Zyxel America channel. And all of the webinars that myself, Troy, or Marcus do, or almost all of them, will be recorded and posted to our YouTube site. So you can always go there if you miss something, if you had to step away, or if you see that there's an upcoming webinar that you're interested in, but you aren't going to be able to make it. Chances are we've done that webinar previously and it's on the YouTube for you to watch. And then we're on LinkedIn at Zyxel US channel. And with that, guys, it's question and answer time. I'm done going through my prepared presentation. Hopefully I didn't bore you too much. Let's take a look at some of these questions. We need to understand features per part number. Is there a sheet somewhere that explains all of that? This was sent in earlier in the presentation. I don't know which slide we were looking at that time. But in general, check out our website. We should have stuff there. I know it's not always the easiest thing to manage. If you're one of our partners, just reach out to your salesperson, tell them what information you're looking for. And chances are we've got something with the information you're looking for that they can send you. And if not, they can request something get created for you. So I don't know if it's Nebula. If it's Nebula, we've got a breakdown, of that Plus, Pro, and free version. That's on our website. If you can find it, if not, you can just reach out to our salesperson. They can provide you the link or provide you a PDF version of that. In general, when it comes to features are generally, if we're talking Nebula, are generally pretty universal. The only exceptions being on the security gateways, there's different features between different product series, like the NSGs have different features in the cloud than the USG Flex and ATP do. On the switches, they're all basically the same with the exception of the 1350s, which with ProPack unlocks those additional features that are exclusive to the 1350s. And then APs are all pretty much the same with the exception of the that sort of prosumer series, the new 50, 55, and 90. Those are missing some of the features in Nebula, and those can be found on our website, I believe. And if not, again, our sales guys can send you something that has the differences. Joe was asking how much are the remote AP licenses? No idea. Best bet on that is to just reach out to distribution, whoever you buy through, or reach out to your salesperson and they can tell you exactly what the model, what the license is you need. I think we've got different versions of the license based on how many devices you want to have converted over to that secure Wi-Fi. But I'm not sure what the pricing is off the top of my head. I don't do much with the pricing side of things. Wayne here has something that says using Nebula at one church building. It is awesome. They wanted an SSID password change. The whole process, including upgrading the firmware, took less than 5 minutes. Love it. Oh, okay. No question there, I guess. Thanks for that, Wayne. Are there any plans to offer AP groups on the free version? Also, are AP groups supported in the Plus and Pro? Yes, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by AP groups. But let me tell you what we can do, and hopefully that we're both on the same page here. So if you want to set up different configurations for different access points, you do have the ability to do that. If you're looking to make different SSIDs available on different access points in different areas, we do have the ability to create groups. We don't call it groups, we call it tagging. So you can go in and add tags to access points. And then when you go over into the SSID configuration, you can choose to limit those settings to just those devices that are tagged with that tag. So it's essentially grouping under a different name. Yeah, so Shannon, I think we're on the same page here. So you can set up this using what we call tags. So yeah, so we have what are called tags. So you go into your list of APs, you pull up the AP and you can add tags. Similar to like a hashtag on Twitter. So you can say, this one is, you could give it these tags. So you can say this one is warehouse So you can put a tag called warehouse. You can add a tag called admin. You can add a tag called whatever you want. And then when you go into the SSID setup, you then say basically limit these SSIDs to only be used with access points that have this tag. And there'll be a list of tags and you just choose them, So, SSID management can be applied to all your APs. SSID accounting can be limited just to those APs that are in the group called accounting or admin or whatever. So yeah, it is there. It's just not as obvious maybe as you're looking for. And I know this is something because we do it, like I said, you're probably used to Ruckus, how Ruckus does it. So we do it a little bit differently. But yeah, it's just, we call it tagging and that's how we do it. So we absolutely have that ability. And again, feel free to reach out, if you have questions, figuring out how to do it, just reach out to your salesperson. They could probably find some documentation to send you, or if need be, we can get our channel sales engineer on the phone, do a screen share or something like that and walk you through configuring whatever it is you need to do. And just because we are talking about the channel sales engineer, if you are part of our partner program, you do have access to him. Now, keep in mind, he's there to help educate you on how to do something. He is not there to do your job for you. So we've had certain partners that basically have called us up and said, here's a new customer I've got. Here's how I want things configured. Go do it for me. So we do not do that for you. But if it's something like this and it's a one-time thing, you want to learn how to configure a new feature, it's something you haven't messed with before, or maybe it's something you've done, you thought you did it right, and it's just not working, reach out to your salesperson. We can get the channel sales engineer, schedule a time to get him on a call, do a screen share, or have him log into your Nebula and take a look at things. That's also something important here when it comes to privacy. We do fully comply with basically every country in the world's privacy regulations. So as such, we can't see what's going on your customers or in your organization unless you give us access. So if you are calling into support and you need help, you can log into Nebula and you can add us as an admin temporarily so we can log in and see what's going on. So do that if you are having some help, need some help with Nebula, and you want us to help you out with something. Just do that preemptively before you contact us, because what often happens is we get an email or a ticket opened. It says, hey, this is the problem I've got. Can you guys take a look? But you haven't given us admin access. So we actually can't do anything. It's all for privacy reasons. A lot of that's all hidden from us unless you make us an admin. So it slows things down because you send us an email, we get to the email and we go, oh, we'd love to help you, but we need to add you as an admin. You don't see the email to the next day. So it just adds a lot of extra time. So go into the Nebula interface. It is in there, even on free versions, add Zyxel as an admin temporarily, click that, then contact us. So then we see your email, we can log in immediately and take a look at what's going on. And I haven't gotten any other questions. Oh wait, something's in chat. Let me pull up chat. Okay, that's not a question. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate the feedback. But that's it, guys. No other questions. If you do want to reach out to me, my email's there on screen. It is Sean R. Sean is spelled S-H-A-W-N, followed by the letter R at Zyxel.com. Or you can always reach out to your sales contact and they can forward feedback or questions to me. But I appreciate you guys turning out today. I hope you found this valuable and hope to see you at one of our next webinars.